wanted to abort me. My mom saved my life. There would have been no Kanye West because my dad was too busy.
Being a father is difficult, and people need one now more than ever.
You know, more and more I feel like the dad of YouTube.
Another group of people who feel personally devastated and betrayed.
Dab for me, Daddy?
I'm not your daddy.
You lied to us.
What are you, my dad?
Father figures are in high demand on the internet. Simultaneously occupying an ambiguous yet familiar role, father figures can be found in artists, authors, and creators alike who are respected and followed by massive audiences. But what has created such a high demand for father figures online, and why are so many influencers viewed as that by their followers? What exactly does it mean to be a father figure anyways?
First of all, I'm not your fucking dad. Like, if you don't want to look up to me anymore, that's fine. I don't want you to look up to me.
To start with, I asked my followers on Twitter and YouTube about who they viewed as online father figures. I received hundreds of responses, ranging from the likes of Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink to popular YouTubers like Vinesauce, Critical, Etika, Justin Wang, and iDubbbz. There are two distinct categories in which they can fall into. A father figure provides guidance and wisdom. You want to grow up to be just like your father. A big brother figure, on the other hand, serves as more of an inspiration, and even if they do provide guidance, it's not coming from the same place of wisdom as a father. This distinction is worth making because people often confuse the two roles even though they serve different purposes. Undoubtedly, the most prominent and well-known father figure online was reflected in a response I kept getting over and over more than anyone else: Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Peterson's long and illustrious career isn't easily summed up in just a few sentences, but his unique perspective as a clinical psychologist, a college professor, and as a father himself has provided self-help, life advice, and spiritual guidance for his largely adult male audience. Three of the core messages found in Peterson's work are finding meaning through adopting responsibility.
We were talking about the necessity of taking on the burden of a responsibility.
Acting as if everything in life matters.
I can live with no responsibility whatsoever. The price I pay is that nothing matters. Or I can reverse it and everything matters. But I have to take the responsibility that's associated with that. It's not so obvious to me that people would take the meaningful path.
And saving your father from the belly of the whale.
So there's this old idea, you know, that you have to rescue your father from the belly of the whale, right? From some monster that's deep in the abyss. You see that in Pinocchio, for example, but it's a very common idea. And I figured out why that is, I think.
More on that later. Like several other online father figures, Peterson can trace the jumpstart of his career to his first appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. Rogan's podcast is one of the most popular in the world, reaching over 200 million monthly listeners, garnering millions of views per episode on YouTube, and influencing untold numbers of people across the globe in total. Another popular name amongst the responses was Jocko Willink, for example, who also gained most of his notoriety from Joe Rogan. Jocko is a former Navy SEAL, now an author and a podcaster himself, who emphasizes strength and acceptance in the face of adversity. One of the most physically inspiring figures is found in David Goggin, who transformed himself from an overweight and out-of-shape minimum wage employee into one of the top ultramarathon runners of all time and a successful author.
And that's where I started learning that life is one big psychological warfare that you play on yourself. You play on yourself, man. The most important conversation I ever had is with myself. And the shit I was telling myself was so fucked up, it was so wrong, it was so misguided. And other people start to write that dialogue for you also. And it starts to be what you say to yourself every single day. And I started creating a whole nother warfare, a whole nother battle started becoming. I was like, oh, hang on a second, Goggins. You have these tools. You have these tools. Your life was basically the perfect grounds for training for where you need to go in your life. All the beatings, all the bullying, all the, you going through learning disabilities, all the struggles. It was the absolute perfect training ground for you to go to where you need to go. And that's how I started looking at my life versus woe is me, poopy pants, kick a rock down the street mentality. It was, nah, God just hooked you right the fuck up.
And Joe Rogan himself is also viewed as a father figure to his regular listeners. Through sharing stories of lessons he's learned in life, from jiu-jitsu to his comedy career, and by approaching his wide variety of guests with an open mind, Rogan has built a uniquely authentic and valuable platform based on long-form conversations, a format which naturally produces more meaningful discussions and allows for the free-form exploration of ideas. This is something severely lacking in most other forms of media. What separates these father figures from mere influencers can be found within the impact they have on their listeners. Followers of people like Peterson, Rogan, or Goggins often express how these father figures have changed their lives in a very real and tangible way. The predominantly male audiences of these father figures indicates to me that there is a shared lack of guidance in the lives of these men. This is something often overlooked by the many critics of Peterson, who echo cynical remarks to the effect of, everything Peterson says is obvious, or isn't this all just common sense? This surface level criticism misses the entire point of father figures to begin with. Everyone is on their own path in life, and what may seem obvious to you isn't always the case with others. In that same vein, the followers of someone like Peterson do need to hear things like, you must set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. They do need to hear that adopting responsibility is the path to finding meaning. And they do need to learn about the consequences of being a boy trapped on Pleasure Island, using escapism to avoid bearing the responsibilities of life.
You won't be able to resist it. You won't have the strength of character. And so then you'll fall prey to crowd pathology. And it'll be because you're too agreeable.
Unsurprisingly, the value of free speech is universally recognized by the online father figures, many of which have gained status through their ability to speak for hours on end about important topics. This is something Peterson experienced firsthand in 2016 when an unruly mob of students took issue with his stance against compelled speech laws being passed in Canada. Many of his own students ended up standing alongside him and supported him through this as well, which was comforting to see. Going against the grain, even when it's unpopular, even when it's uncomfortable, means that you are willing to protect something or someone that you believe in. Speaking of values, they need to come from somewhere, and for a growing number of people, the family unit is antiquated and outdated, slowly eroding over time. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 24.7 million children live without their biological father. And according to the National Center for Fathering, 72% of the U.S. regards fatherlessness as the most significant family or social problem facing America. Everywhere in culture, language, and memes, we see the conflict between children and their fathers, daddies, daddy issues, and caricatures of out-of-touch boomer dads. Familial issues have been a cultural staple of the West for decades.
It was great seeing you, son.
You too, Lou.
While on the surface, political tensions and social division can seem vastly complicated, I think a lot of problems can be boiled down to people not being raised properly. The relationship you have with your family has a direct correlation to the way you view society at large. A family is just a microcosm of society, and when enough families are dysfunctional, those same patterns appear on a macro scale. And that's not to say that kids can't succeed without a good father or that people without good families families are inherently bad. I just think that everyone deserves a supportive family and a good father. But what exactly does it mean to be a good father in the first place? And what is the right way to raise kids? As someone with both big brothers and father figures in my life, I've reflected on what the role of a man and a father is for a long time now. To answer these questions, I went to a family cookout to interview the father figures in my life.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name. And I carry it with me like my daddy did. But I'm living the dream that he kept hid. Moving me down the highway, rolling me down the highway, moving ahead so life won't pass me by.
Okay, so this is my dad. I call him Papa. So what was something about having kids that you weren't prepared for?
Oh my God, a lot of things. Are you kidding me? Everything was not prepared for. How to raise them, what to say, what not to say, what to do. It's all new. No matter how much you have seen other family or yourself, when you have your own kids, it's a complete different story. Because it's you and your kids that has never been experienced before. So
This is my uncle, Andre.
When my first one was born, Erica, the moment she was into her room, I just had this urgency to go and work, to support.
wow.
I felt like she's a vulnerable human being that needs 100% of me and the mother.
Is there anything you wish your father did for you growing up that maybe he wasn't the best at or didn't do?
You know, I was born in a farm in a village in Iran, or Armenian village, and when he was 12 years old, his parents passed away, so he was kind of growing up on his own, learning how to deal with the tough challenges. So, but now that as a father and looking back, he, and my mom too, but now as a father, he really did his utmost best to do whatever he could in those tough circumstances that we lived through.
My dad being from the old generation, there was not common for him to come home or see me and give me a hug and a kiss.
What should the role of a father figure be in your mind?
The father, a good father should be a good example of their children to be good, to be ethical, correct, morally, every way. That's the basic foundation of that. The rest of it, all other experiences, whatever happens to the kids, you should not be too much of controlling. I'm against too much of control of children in terms of, well, you gotta be this, you have to be this. Those can happen within the children themselves. They can find their own way in the life.
For my grandfather's generation, being a father meant working hard to provide a better life for your family. For my uncle, it means protecting your family and showing affection for your kids. And for my father, it means providing your children with the right tools to create their own path in life. With each passing generation, the role of a father gets more complicated. The lines between gender are more blurred. Fewer people are having kids, and a growing number of people are against the idea of bringing new life into the world. These factors make the family unit seem obsolete in the eyes of many materialistic, career-driven people. Knowing the role of a father starts by knowing the role of a man. It's not a coincidence, then, that many young men seem to be more lost, confused, and lonely than ever. Finding purpose as a man is more difficult than ever before, with so many pitfalls of mindless pleasure to fall into. These difficulties are often alluded to by online father figures who, unlike the rest of media, culture, and entertainment, seem to actually understand the unique struggles of men in the age of information.
they just fucking lay around, you know, and then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them. And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun.
Addictive.
And you don't, I have a real problem with them. And you do them and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Gaming isn't always a waste of time, but escapism into games and entertainment is especially alluring to men who don't know what else to put their time and energy into. And yet within these games, there is still a glimmer of what men are truly seeking. Some of the most popular games have told the story of the hero's journey, about facing near impossible odds and having the fate of the world depend on you. The power of stories comes from the ability to provide meaning across the span of time. We watch these stories unfold through our screens and we act them out in the games we play over and over again. These epic adventures, harrowing journeys, and courageous characters give us something to strive for, something to aim at, and something to believe in. At the core of every father figure lies a message of perseverance, a message of hope in the face of tragedy, hardship, and difficulty that life is guaranteed to bring you. That despite your difficulties, your disadvantages, and your failures, in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, you can succeed. You can change the entire world even if you believe. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. In a spiritual and psychological sense, it certainly feels like hard times are upon us. There's something that needs saving.
Because one of the things you'd like to know, if you wanted to know something deep about yourself, is that you could face the worst that there was and prevail. People are capable of that. I think that despite how tragic life is and how malevolent things are, that fundamentally our spirit, let's say, has the capacity to confront that and to fix it, not only to deal with it psychologically, but to deal with it practically, and that we could make things much better.
The timeless story of Pinocchio is a cautionary tale of a puppet boy created by his father, Geppetto. The naive, lifelike puppet sets out on a quest to become a real boy. And along that journey, Pinocchio falls prey to deceitful conmen and hucksters who allure him with the promise of fame and fortune, ultimately leading him to a symbolic place called Pleasure Island. An escape from authority and rules, a place where delinquent behavior is encouraged, but all is not what it seems. It is revealed that the boys on Pleasure Island are ultimately turned into donkeys and shipped off to work in the salt mines. Geppetto ventures out to sea to save his son Pinocchio, but along the way, he's swallowed by a whale. Having barely escaped Pleasure Island with donkey ears, Pinocchio finds his father in the belly of the whale and rescues him. The story of Pinocchio resonates with men who have been lost and led astray, even with great artists like Kanye, relayed in his song, Pinocchio Story.
I just wanna be a real boy.
Saving your father from the belly of the whale means transcending your past failures to become what your father couldn't. It means facing the greatest possible challenge you can manage. That's the path a good father passes down to their kids, and in this case, that's what Jordan Peterson and my father have taught me. My father isn't perfect, but I'm forever grateful that he's been in my life and for all the things he's taught me. But I'd be remiss if I didn't also credit people like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and other online influencers for the wisdom they have shared with me and millions of others. The impact of a good father can reach more people now than ever before. It is through those positive role models that a brighter future is possible. While for many people those figures may be lacking in the family setting, there is still a guiding light out there. The amazing thing about the internet is that there exists an opportunity to understand yourself and your role in the world thanks to the wisdom imparted by people you may have never even met in person. A father figure can guide you through the perils of life's journey when no one else will. By standing for something, believing in a higher purpose, and having the courage to speak up, the path towards meaning becomes clear.
Open up your throat and let the all of that time go. I know it sucks that he's done to try to think of what you want. You gotta open up your throat. Open up your throat. Open up your throat to let the all of that time go. I know it sucks that he's done to try to think of what you want. You gotta open up your throat. Support your brothers, 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 support your brothers.